Well, has been well publicised, South Africa's constitution, one of the most progressive in the world, the first to prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation. It was also the fifth country in the world to legalise same-sex marriage. But one thing to have the laws and the protections written on paper, it's quite something else when we talk about the lived experiences of the LGBTQIA plus community. There's a lot to talk about. I'm joined by Nomhle Soni from Sonke Gender Justice this evening. And Nomhle, good evening to you. I appreciate your time. Is there anything to celebrate when I use crimes such as homophobia, transphobia, discrimination and violent attacks? It's almost a daily occurrence. I don't imagine there's much to celebrate. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening to the viewers. Well, there's not much to celebrate on a daily basis as LGBTI plus people go through hate crime, hate speech throughout their daily lives. But we see little steps being taken forward to combat this. Example, when we look at the Prevention and Combating of Hate Crime bill that's, I think, recently been passed, been signed by the president. So it's a little steps that we must take to make a big difference in our country.
And when we talk about making a big difference, who needs to take the lead in making this difference? Is it society or is it the example that government is setting?
I think it should be the society, the individual within the society. It starts with you at home, and then we scale it up to the government. It has to be a joint effort for us to fight hate crime, to fight for basic human rights for everyone, as everyone in South Africa has the rights under the constitution of our country.
So why is it in 2023, Nomhle, we're still having this conversation every single day, whether it's on this channel or on other media, we're hearing and seeing and witnessing attacks of members of the LGBTQIA plus community? Why in 2023 does much not seem to have changed? I feel like every year on Human Rights Day I talk to an organisation like yours and we always talk about the same thing without much progress.
I think we must focus on these little pockets which tend to infuse and take out rage from people. We must focus on institutions like our churches to fight this hate crime with us. We must talk to our leaders within the communities, especially traditional leaders, our leaders in the community, our councillors, to preach this every day within their society, to have inclusion into whatever they do. Especially when I say churches, they must have positive ministering when they minister. When they quote, they must quote not to discriminate, but to bring people together. It's a matter of targeting very important pockets within the communities that make a huge difference. Those pockets of people or those leaders who are highly influential within the community.
By the way, the thunder you can hear in the background there's a bit of a storm moving through the Randburg Hyde Park area. I can actually see it outside the window, so excuse the thunder in the background. So when you talk about leaders in a community, for example, try and add some meat to the flesh for me. Who are those leaders? Are we talking about political leaders? Are we talking about social leaders? I ask the question because if ever there was a time to draw to the fore the attention and the plight of LGBTQIA plus members, it's ahead of elections next year. Very much the focus on politicians. Is politicians and are politicians still the ones we should be turning to in a case like this?
I think before we look into politicians, we must look within ourselves, our leaders that we live with every day in the community, that influential person in the community. How do we tap into him or her into saying, include us, don't only invite us when it's time for big events within the community, and then from there we scale it up to the politicians as well. It's very important that they know that we're here and that we exist, and then we're not just here when it comes to election time. We want our rights, we demand our rights as every next person in the community. I think also when you're talking about leadership, You look into even a nurse, a clerk, any person that you look up to is a leader in your community. Any person that's influential, they must know about LGBTI rights, and they must practice them. And they must know it's not a privilege to have these rights. We have these rights like anyone else in the community.
I want to refer back to, I feel like I had this discussion back in 2017, 2018. I went and found the article, Nomhle. It's a World Economic Forum article that is saying here, and I hope you can hear me, their research saying 51% of people polled in South Africa believe gay people should have the same human rights. But a staggering, and I'm quoting, 72% feel that same-sex activity is morally wrong. They were citing the religious sector in this article. Where are we on that when we start talking about the moral aspect of this? Where do churches come into this? Because this is an article 5 years old, but still relevant today as I sit talking to you.
Churches play a huge role in influencing the thoughts of the community, the thoughts of the individual. Because, for example, if a male will go to this church, will come and preach this to the entire family, and this will be taken as something that's cast in stone because it's said by a reverend or a preacher. So that's why we're saying, even at Sonke Gender Justice, we have a segment where we focus on religious sector in saying, how do you preach the word? How do you select what to select? And, we go into conversation into saying, look at what you're saying. Why is your preaching at the end of the day causing fuel towards death of another human being? So we're looking into saying people must go into studying the Bible, really going deep and knowing the meanings, and looking at the Bible from its originality to now, the many ways that it's been translated into many languages, and how some of the meat has been lost, and some of the things that have been said in the Bible has been added by us in the past maybe 20 centuries. So the Bible is not really the originality of it, but people tend to choose what will hurt the LGBTI community, according to them, according to how they feel. But we're saying we are here, we have open arms, come learn. Another thing is the society, the community needs to learn, needs to educate itself, and it needs to ask questions as to saying, Reverend, why are you saying this? Is it not going to hurt someone at the end of the day? The community needs to speak up, and the community needs to take time and say, let's go deeper, let's go educate ourselves about these things that have been said by another person. But at the end of the day, the person that has been killed because of your hate speech, it's someone else's daughter, someone else's sister. The other day, you're causing hurt to the entire family, not just that individual that you were hating.
Excuse me, let me ask you this in closing as a last question to you. When you talk about educating yourself, educating society, and providing information, I immediately think of the media, Nomhle, and the role of the media in this and on a day like today. How good are we at doing our jobs in really keeping LGBTQIA plus issues in the media? I feel like today we're going to talk about it, and you and I will talk about it again next year.
Yes. The media plays a vital role in how they portray the LGBTI community, because usually when you see the LGBTI communities, movies, and everything that's portrayed on television, it's mostly about money, the glitz and the glam, or it's extreme suffering. So it's on the both ends of life. So we like the media to focus on the real, on the daily basis, or the daily living, on how LGBTI community, LGBTI people are normal people, just like anyone else. We're not living for the glam or for the fashion. This is a person. This is a person that's living, that has a family. But we're seeing the change in the media a bit. It's not the same like 10 years ago, but there is change, but we still need more change. We still need to collaborate with media. We need the media to do their research properly before they air things, before they cast movies or cast people that are going to play the roles, to get the gist of how an LGBTI person lives on a daily basis in South African context. But that's also important to bring it home to South Africa, not take it to other countries. Let's bring it here, have a true reflection on how we live on the daily basis.
This is why I use the phrase a lived experience. I think it's so very important. Hopefully someone watching tonight goes and does their homework, does their research, starts to learn, informs themselves and educates themselves. Nomhle, thank you very much indeed for joining us this Human Rights Day evening. Nomhle Soni from the Sonke Gender Justice.